Hey everyone, you're listening to episode 51 of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. Thank you so much for inviting us to your table today. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. We're a group of diverse friends who offer our takes on the latest and greatest board games to hit our table. I'm your host, Daniela, the Goofy Noob, and I'm joined today by the Collector.
Hey, this is David.
And the Intellectual Introvert.
Hi, everyone. This is Chris.
As well as the Deluxeifier.
Hello, it's Pete.
Today, we are talking about two games that incorporate the use of some pretty cool individual player boards. We'll start in Germany, where we're getting good at chopping wood and positioning our butts in glass huts as we practice the art of glassmaking in Black Forest. Then 5,000 years after everything was destroyed, the ice is receding, so we'll be proceeding to explore some more and get that vibe back in our tribe in Revive. And finally, because we just can't help ourselves, we'll add a whole new layer as we pit these games against each other in our ultimate showdown, the Battle of the Funnest. But before we get on board, David, what's our topic of discussion for today?
Yeah, so today, if you're listening to this live, we are going to be, me and Chris will be at Origin. So if you are in the area, come say hi to us. You might see us at a table. Look for the big Fifth Meeple shirt that Chris is wearing. But our topic is going to be about the conventions, and it's going to be, what do you look forward to most at conventions, and what are things that you look forward to the least at conventions? And I know, Danielle, you haven't been before, so you could just kind of shoot from the hip there if you want.
I've actually been to a Comic-Con.
But yeah, we can go from that. So perfect.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it's all the vendors. I love walking around vendors because even in Cleveland, where we're kind of centrally located out of, even like every year we generally go to the boat show, and I love looking at all the little things that are being provided. So thematic things. So I feel like for the gaming world, it would be really cool to see what people are providing. If it's dice, if it's just components, you know. The Deluxeifier here would probably love that aspect of it too. But for me, those are things I like in conventions.
Yeah, for me, it's not so much the buying. I might buy a few things. I know certainly at Origins I did last time, but I'm not going for the buy. I think I like Origins so much because I'm going for the play. I want to get as much plays as I can. Last year when we were there for 4 days. We got there as soon as we could. We played until we basically couldn't walk anymore, went back to the hotel, slept, got up and came back. And we got as many plays as we could. I know it's an opportunity. We've talked that, hey, this is, if you're ever going to play the 8-hour epic game, this is the time to do it. Not real keen on that myself because I don't get as many plays in it. I just want to go in there, try some things, maybe with some people I don't get to play or some games. But I'm also looking for the different experience. This year, David and I are going to get to play two of the large games. So we're playing like Giant Suro, and then we're playing Power Grid on some sort of 8-foot board. And that's an experience I'm not going to get anywhere else. And so I'm also just looking for that experience that I'm not going to get anywhere else.
So for me, conventions aren't really my scene as far as when it comes to gaming. I prefer playing with my friends and just hanging out and being more in a comfortable spot. I do know it is a great experience if you haven't done it. Last year when I did go, Chris and I were able to play a game. We went to the library, checked it out. So I would say if there's anything on about that, if you don't have a lot of access to games, unlike we do here with David on all his games, it is a great place to go and try a different game that maybe you haven't had a chance to play, or nobody in your group has. So that's one thing that I would look forward to. And Daniela, you also mentioned that the vendors. I enjoy walking around. As far as buying things, I didn't buy too much when I was there last year, but I think it's a good experience to walk around, just see what's coming, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah, and get some ideas and stuff that you guys, both of you guys 3D print, so you can get some ideas for components too.
Yeah. David?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the best thing I like, and I look forward to Origins especially, is because I'm normally teaching a lot of games, and so when I go to these conventions, I don't ever really teach a game, which is nice. Like, I will go up, people will volunteer to teach other games, I'll see signs, we'll play with some of the publishers, and they'll teach you a couple rounds of the game. But I like the fact that I can go there and not have to teach anything is really nice. It's kind of like a vacation from, my normal everyday kind of gaming atmosphere with the people I play with. And then just the stories that come about, being at a convention. If you ever, any convention you go to, it's always the inside jokes, the stories that you form and develop over time. But is there anything you guys don't look forward to when you go to a convention?
Well, Chris doesn't look forward to leaving his $40 mug.
$100 mug. It's a $100 mug.
It's a $100 mug.
I'm going to try again this year.
Okay.
I'm going to try again this year.
That's good.
I would say if you're not into crowds, it's not a place to go to. Again, I don't particularly like large crowds in that, but I will go to it for the event. But that would be a downside if, you don't like germs and all that. So that would be one downside for me.
Yeah. To me, it's same crowd control. I've been down to the Arnold Classic as well, down in Columbus area as well. And if it is packed and the traffic isn't flowing, like the pedestrian walking around and you can't get to see the things you want to see, it's almost like it makes you feel like people didn't consider the average Joe coming to the actual convention and like it wasn't thought out. So that's something, I agree, Pete, that I don't enjoy.
Yeah, for me, I think it may be last year we played a couple of games and I played 40 games, I think, over there. But we played a couple of games that got cut off. And so, your 2 hours is over, right? And so, you only have one more round left, but tough. Your time's up, your game's over. And you're sitting there thinking, but it took a half hour before you came to even start to teach us. So that's frustrating to me. Other than that, I there's not much I look for. I'm not going to play another 18xx game. I'll tell you that. But even the ones that were bad experiences, I have that memory of, oh my gosh, let me tell you about this game that I played was one of the worst experiences ever. But then you can laugh talking about it. So I had a blast last year. I'm looking forward to it again.
Yeah, I would say I always think about those bad experiences that me and Chris have when we go to conventions and just trying to set the table and figuring out how do I get myself out of this situation so I'm not here for another hour. I'm not going to say sabotage the game, but I'm just saying I want to move this game along because I either it's terrible or, but it's just that awkward situation of how do you get out of it? Because a lot of times you are playing with the designer or you are playing with one of the publishers. And, if you don't really like that game and you're looking at your watch and you're like, this is going to take another hour and 20 minutes, how do I politely sneak out is kind of my least favorite experiences at conventions, is trying to be polite, but yet being like, I need to get out of here.
Get out of there.
So thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, David. So those are opinions on conventions, but we'd love to know what all of you out there have to say. And truly, if any of you are heading to Origins this summer, please reach out to us and let us know. David and Chris will both be there, and we just would love to get to meet some of you people out there in the wild. So let us know by sending us an email at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com, following us on our social media or in our BGG Guild, or by checking out our website at fifthmeeple.com. In addition to subscribing to our show, one of the best ways to help us grow is to leave an Apple review on our podcast or wherever you may listen. And if you do, we may just read it one day on our future episode. All right, guys, I don't want to be a ham, but let's get into our discussion of Black Forest.
Black Forest is a 1-to-4 player worker placement game where you travel from village to village, engaging specialists to help transform your little hut in the woods into a glass-making empire. The main game board consists of 5 villages, each consisting of 3 or 4 modular spaces, providing benefits when visited. A market of buildings is available for later purchase. Players start the game with a small estate board including fields, ponds, forests, and a glass hut, plus a small amount of resources on their production tableau. On your turn, after optionally paying a resource to modify the board, you must move your pawn to a new location, paying provisions if traveling outside of your current village. Once unlocked, you can travel to jobs, which allow you to trade goods for significant benefits. Usually, however, you'll place your pawn between 2 tradespeople, after which you must implement at least one and optionally both of the effects they provide. These may be direct rewards, such as gaining cattle or constructing a building, relative rewards, such as gaining an amount of sand based on the number of pawns in your domain, or purchased rewards, such as spending charcoal to gain bricks. Some actions upgrade your glass hut, and when upgraded, you gain a new estate tile and the cycle restarts. As you gain or lose resources, you move tokens inside one of 2 resource wheels. Anytime you have one or more of each type of resource, they're automatically converted to glass in one wheel or provisions and commodities in the other. The game end is triggered when any player's provision token reaches a certain point in the cooking wheel. Players then earn points from the remaining glass, estates, livestock and pastures, the position of their cooking wheel, constructed buildings, and building endgame bonuses. The player with the most points breaks the glass ceiling and wins the game. Black Forest was designed by Uwe Rosenberg and Tito Lorenz and was first published in 2024 by Fuhrer and Spiel.
All right. Thanks, Chris. All right, so starting off with Black Forest here, let's talk about some of the things that we like about this game. I mean, overall, I think I really, really like this game a lot. And I just want to talk about, too, if we want to start on the design of the game with the wheels and how they move and how they interact. I mean, I'm sure the setup isn't a peach for David setting up the game in advance. You need some table space for this and stuff, but I just really enjoyed all the components that really went with this game. I thought the houses that all the tiles are set on, where you have to go visit them to get like the tiles. I thought those were well thought out. Nothing you couldn't read or see, even down to like the little stickers on the wood pieces. I feel like if they were just wood pieces or they like orange represented brick or something without the image on it, I feel like it wouldn't have been as good as it was. So.
Yeah, I would guess all of us have the resource wheels as one of our notes. That hey, that is a unique mechanism. I'm not sure if that exists anywhere. It seems to me like, hey, that might have been something that new in this game. You might see that in the future. And not just the fact that it's the wheels, but I love the automatic conversion that, hey, you don't control when you want to convert it. And you kind of got to watch that, right? Because you think you're advancing and all of a sudden, boom, yeah, you're advancing and you got glass, but that one piece of charcoal you needed is no longer there anymore, right? And so that, to me, I always like the puzzle. I talk about the puzzle, but that's the hidden puzzle in there that, hey, if you're not careful and you don't balance this right, what could help you could also bite you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think the puzzle of this game is what really makes it seem to me. So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I do like that you mentioned control over that, because you can decide what you want to get. And sometimes you do want to hold off on getting a resource in particular. And I always say I like games where there's some interaction, and there could be times where you can give somebody a resource when you go to a particular spot and you get two of that resource, but everybody else gets one of those. And it can really mess up people's plans, because then all of a sudden what they had planned for, now they got to take another step or another turn to get maybe that extra piece of wood that the wheel moved on them. And yeah, they have more glass, which is great, but you just foiled my plan. So yeah, it is a very unique mechanic. And I also like that that's also the timer of the game. As we go along, as you're getting those resources, there's that clock. And once you hit that 8 o'clock hour and you get your piece over there, that triggers the end of the game. So I like that it acts in a couple different ways in a very unique mechanism.
And I will say, I used that several times when we're looking at, well, where should I go? I know people are going to get pieces. What am I going to give them? And there's a mechanism too, where when you visit the same village that somebody else was in, you have to give them something, and you're looking at their board and saying, well, what can I give them that they don't have the capacity to receive, or what can I give them that I think might actually mess them up? And sometimes I might just do that in general. It doesn't look like he needs this. In other cases, it might be, I'm chasing this big building. I think he's chasing that big building too. How can I take an action that will mess him up so that I have a better chance of getting what I'm going for?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm looking at David every time I say that.
I mean, I think this game, for as puzzly as it is, I think the turns are really snappy, at least in my mind. Like, go to this spot, get these two things, take this action on the one side of the card, take this other action in any order that you kind of want to do. And I feel like, for whatever reason, I play a lot of games, and I feel that this game in particular, the turns are just really snappy. I feel like the turns go really smooth. I know we play a lot of games at a higher player count, and I never really felt like I was waiting too long for my turn, which I think is a definite benefit if you're looking for a game of kind of this caliber with this kind of complexity.
Yeah, one of the other nice things with the game is you have anytime actions, and you can take those even on other people's turns. So, for example, to do a resource conversion, you can do that while maybe David's taking his turn, and you're kind of planning as you're going along. So when it comes to you, you're already, and you don't have to wait and make those moves. Now, I agree that the turns are quick, or they can be quick, but there's also that turn where somebody moves something on you just before, and it's like, all right, well, now I gotta stop. Give me a second, guys, because Chris just messed up my move, and where I was gonna go isn't gonna work anymore. It's interesting with that particular functionality.
And that can happen because somebody maybe went to a spot that you wanted, but it can also happen because this board is constantly changing. There's the traveling merchant that you can optionally, before your turn, start to move things around. And a lot of times I think you're moving it so you can get something somewhere so that you can go and use it. But other times you might be using it because you're thinking someone else is going after something, you're going to make it hard for them to do it or something like that. And I don't know how many times someone moved and I was like, well, that just changed my turn again. But it's fun. It's not so damaging that, okay, you just destroyed everything. Yeah. There's going to be something you can do. which is another thing I like about this game. There's a lot to do, and every turn feels meaningful.
Yeah, worker placement, you guys know, it's one of my favorite mechanics. And this is one where you can't just go anywhere on the board. You actually have to have the movements to get there. So going from little village to little village costs you that time. And that time, again, ticks that clock and that wheel. So you have to pay attention, because you can also get yourself snookered going to a location you can't get out. And then you got to go begging. Fortunately, I don't think any of us had to do that, except for Dan.
Okay, Chris is pointing to me.
Sorry, except for Danielle.
That was
I
game
shouldn't have
one.
brought it up.
I didn't have
Sorry.
to beg game two.
But, that is a neat, unique mechanic where you can't just go anywhere. You have to plan out your moves, usually a couple turns ahead.
Yeah, I think the movements in this game are very straightforward, kind of alluding to what you guys are saying, what David was saying earlier, is the actions are quite simple. You got to move, you got to either, buy, or, the player card is really quite great in this game. But doing that intended action can be where the mess up happens, is what we're all kind of saying, as well as when, a couple times Chris is like looking at me like daggers in the side of my head, like you just went where I wanted to go. So
every time, a couple times, every time.
At one point I looked at his eyes and I'm like, all right, where are you looking on the board? I was doing the angle thing, trying to see what he was trying to buy so I could buy it out in front of him. Yeah, just doing your intended action is, I think, the tough part, but it's fun in it.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I like about this game is just looking at the scores, the games that we played. I feel that the games are really close, and I still haven't figured out the puzzle, like if there's a certain way to win or not. I feel like there's a lot of different ways that you can go about this puzzle and score points. And I think that's what makes it interesting. I think there are multiple paths to victory on this game if you are looking at it. And every game we play, the winner and the loser a lot of times is, within 7 to 8 points, which it's stacked pretty hard in this game. If you want a point, I feel like you have to really squeeze. I mean, every point is worth the point. Not like in other games. It's not like a point salad. I feel like every point that you play in this game, you actually earn that point.
Yeah, I think to pair it off what you just said, David, one of my final thoughts on this was going to be that, like, I feel, don't worry and look at what everybody else is doing. You will not understand. I mean, you might understand what they're going for and what they're trying to do, but the points piece, you're not going to be able to suss that out really until the end of the game, I don't think. So maybe other people can look around at other people's boards and know how many points they had. I was generally surprised at the end when we totaled up the points to see, wow, we were all very close within each other. So and it was really cool. And then there was a couple times too, I think, when we were playing that someone I thought was doing poor did better. So yeah, it's kind of cool how that ends. All right, well, let's talk about some of the thorns in this game. So what are the things that may just poke you a little bit wrong here? David, kind of on the opposite end, a little bit of a thing for me is some of the lag time between. I think when we played our second games of this, it went a lot faster because we knew what we were doing, but there could be hangups if you got some people who have a lot of like analysis paralysis, I think, in this game, which just is a little kind of warning, I guess, for people.
Which we might have seen a couple of times, but I didn't feel that in the games we were playing. I felt like, and you touched on it, it's not super, super complex. You need to match things together, but I didn't see a lot of analysis paralysis, and I'm one that is irritated by that, even though I can be guilty of it sometimes. When I'm sitting there for a long time, there's just not a lot of fun in that. And I'll say I didn't see that as much, but I can see where you could, but we didn't experience that, I didn't think.
No, I agree. And I think to Pete said earlier, we were all kind of like, oh no, someone messed up my turn. Like, sorry. Like, just give me a second so I can refigure out what I'm doing. So I think as you get to learn the game and you get to learn the pieces, especially the buildings, this game will be much snappier, to David's point.
There's one action that you can take to move a particular tile from one area to another, and it's the wagon wheel action. I think
it's a traveling merchant.
Traveling merchant. I know for myself, I know when I was teaching Dave when we played the other day at his house, and I think Daniela as well, you want to move the thing to where you want it to go, but that's not the way it works. What you end up doing is you can pick a particular tile and move that tile to where that traveling merchants is, and those swap. Too many times, or I should say at least the first couple times that we played it, it's like I want to move this one to where I want to go, but that's not the way it works, and it can kind of mess you up. So I wouldn't call that really a bad thing. I think it's just one of those things that you need to wrap your head around that's a little out of the ordinary when you're playing a game like that.
Yeah, but I definitely did use it for my own benefit too.
Yes, you can use it for your own benefit. It's just, I know when I was playing with Dave that he wanted to move things around and it just wasn't it wasn't going where he wanted it to, and just had to take a step back and say, no, Dave, that's not how that works. You can't put this one here and this other one.
Yeah, putting the traveling merchant where you want to go is easy and doable.
Yeah.
Getting something else where you want to go is going to take a combination of moves and thinking ahead and things going your way.
Exactly. And I think that's where it is when you have a tile that you want to go to, not necessarily to the traveling merchant, and trying to get that to finagle right is the challenge. David?
I mean, I'm just going to throw this out there, but I really don't like the score track. I know that's like
I wrote that down.
Because on the score track for the game, it's on the backside of one of the building tiles. So first off, you have to get all the building tiles off of the thing. And there could be a decent amount of building tiles if nobody built on it. So you're clearing about, 8 to 10 tiles off of there if you want to just reset and play again. And then when you turn it around, it snakes. Like the scoring track snakes, but it doesn't snake in the way that's like 5, 10, 15, 20. It snakes at like weird parts, I think. And so I can never fully...
It's like 9 per row or something.
Yeah, we had to like actually count out because like, you have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 instead of just, being able to do it, really fast. And it was just one of those annoying things where I'm like, who thought of this? You could have just made this a lot simpler. And I just hate when they mess with scoring tracks like this. So that's kind of just one of my pet peeves too. But
silly little
things
things
in there
that take away from
just
the experience.
Dumb. Yeah.
I know when I played with Dave on the score track, he says, just track it on another piece of paper. Or I actually had the BG app, BG Stats app, and I just use that to track it rather than flip it over because exactly what you said, to move all the tiles off. Yeah, it helps with cleanup. You're going to have to do it anyways, but it is kind of an extra step that you might not need if you're using a scoring app.
How was set up, David? Because I didn't have to set it up and I wouldn't want to. It just seemed like a lot of buildings to...
Yeah, setup was, I think there's like 36 buildings or something like that on there. And then it wants you to basically randomize 10 of them to flip it to the B side. So there's A and a B side to the tiles. And so I just got like a random number generator and just kind of randomized it that way. But it is a little bit of a complicated setup, more so than a normal game. But I think, to be honest, I think the juice is worth the squeeze in this one, so... I for the gameplay, I would gladly set it up. But my other complaint probably of this game, or a thorn, and you guys know this about me if you've listened to this podcast, is, again, the uneven turns. I'm not saying that it leads to victory, but I still don't like it. I get it that it's a race to try to get there, but it still doesn't sit well with me. I just don't like games that have this. I like the race component, potentially, but I think the issue is you could have vastly different games based off the people playing. I know when we play with Pete likes to push endgame a lot, so I know that the game is going to run a lot shorter, and we're not going to get to run our engines as much, where I think if I played with like Daniela or Chris, potentially, we'd be sitting here a little bit longer. It'd be a longer game. So I think the game length can vary based off who's playing the game. So just kind of be aware that if you have players that really want to push endgame, the game's going to probably be quicker than players that are just dawdling around, because this game, kind of how it works earlier, kind of we alluded to, is that you have to travel in order to get to the end game. So if people aren't really moving, if they're staying in the same towns, doing multiple actions to keep building up their engine, it could potentially lead to a longer game than what we've experienced. And we kind of play around the 2-hour mark. But even then, I feel like that was fast. So... I don't know what you guys' experience is to that, but yeah.
I agree. And that's another one of my final points was going to be in my summary is move less at the beginning and move more at the end is how I feel my second game went a lot better and how I got to build all the items that I needed on my wheel to build up. So I agree with that wholeheartedly, what you're saying.
Yeah, I remember one of the games we played. I just dawdled around in the same village, just going between like 2 or 3 spots, and I was advancing my glass hut and expanding it because I could. No one else was coming into my village, and I had no reason to move. And it was, maybe it wasn't as exciting, but man, I got a quick engine going really fast, and then I started traveling.
Yes,
and it worked out really well for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dave and I played, when I taught him the other day, we played 2 games over the course of the weekend. The first game he really did well. It was a teaching game, and we actually had the same scores, and I think I ended up winning because I was the one who triggered the end game. That was kind of the tiebreaker. On the second game that we played, it only took an hour and 15 minutes. And I had moved that wheel, and I really wasn't intending moving the wheel, but everything was just lining up and I was just moving along. And I think that was one of the things that Dave made a comment that, and maybe we'll hear it in the final when we do voting. But I know when I was talking with him, one of the things he said was the second game was way different than the first one, and whether he just couldn't get his engine going. So that is, to your point, David, sometimes I do push the end because I know you guys, I'll say it and I'll admit it here. You guys are probably better at engine building than me. And the only way for me to win is to not let that happen by trying to push the end game and try to score before you guys can ramp up and actually cash in.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I understand why you do it, Pete. I just don't like it.
You do it so much you don't even realize you're doing it anymore.
I know. I should look and see how many times I actually end a game. I don't think there's a stat for that, so I'm glad we're not tracking that.
Hey, BG stats, you need to put that in there.
I think one of my last things might be there are quite a few buildings, and to understand each building is going to take a couple plays throughs to understand what each of those does, if it's a reoccurring action or if it's a one-time action or if it's just points. I know the last game I was just playing straight for the highest points on those buildings that I could get. I kind of didn't even worry about the actions on them some of the times because I couldn't get the resource to actually do the action. So I was just like, all right, let me do this angle of it. So that might just be like a thing to throw out there. If you're going to play this game, you're going to need to play it a couple times just to understand again all those. David made good printouts of the actual different buildings that we could use and look at as well. But I think we all kind of work together in that. So if you're playing with a group, just work together and try and understand what some of those are.
And David mentioned there's 36 buildings. They're on a board. They're probably going to be on one end of the table.
Yeah, true.
It was hard for me to be able to see what all those are. Now there's a hint on the left side of each of those boards that says this is kind of what it does. That's not enough. For me, I'm constantly leaning over the table, leaning over Daniela's board so that I can see, and then she can see what I'm staring at. But I'm looking at what is this over there? That can be a little hard to see. A little nitpick, but still hard to tell.
All right, David, why don't you take us to the collector's corner?
Yeah, so right now this game is on Amazon. You can get it for $69.95 is what it's going for. At the time of this recording, it's 14% off, so you're looking at $59.95, which is a decent price. On the used market, it's going anywhere between $40 and $50 I see currently, and then I just checked our friendly local board game store, and it was going for $55.99 there. So that just kind of gives you some references onto kind of where this game is going. But I will say the box is really heavy, and there's a lot of stuff in it, so... And, I think the price is kind of justified.
Yeah, I actually think that the used, $40 for all those components and stuff that you're playing with, and for such a, for me, a great game. I like it.
After this podcast, you got to tell me which store that's at because I got my note.
Sounds good.
I'll say in a second here.
All right. Final thoughts, David, then?
Yeah, my final thoughts on this game. I actually really enjoyed this game. I thought I didn't know if I would like it right away. I enjoyed the puzzling aspect of it, and I just think that there's so many different ways to win. I know a lot of times I didn't go the same routes that, you guys went with expanding your land masses out and stuff like that. And, I was still very, very competitive at the end. So, I kind of want to get this game to the table more, but I really enjoyed my experience with this. Pete, what did you think?
Yeah, the first time we played this game and we finished, I put it on my buy list right away. I really enjoyed it, and I think there's a lot to explore, as you mentioned, and we talked about the lots of randomness with the tiles and that. So I would play this again anytime if you guys want to set it up. I enjoy it. I think that wheel mechanic is very unique, and I like games that give me something different from one game to another. So if this is a unique mechanism that I really can't experience anywhere else, I really enjoy, and that's worthy of going into my collection and keeping it. Chris?
Yeah, we agreed when we started this podcast that sometimes you would have to play games that you didn't like, and you just have to suck it up, and you're going to play it a couple of times so that we can talk about it. I came into this game thinking that was going to be one of them. I'm seeing Uwe Rosenberg. I'm thinking, okay, Agricola, Le Havre, here comes another one, and I'm just going to have to suffer through it. And we played it, and a couple minutes in, I'm like, okay, this is pretty awesome, right? And immediately I'm in, and it was a totally different experience than I've had from a lot of the other games that he had done. And our games have averaged 2 hours long. It's been 2 fully engaged hours that I've enjoyed every time we played it. So I really like this game. I don't think I'm going to pay that price for it, but if I can find a better price on it, I may add it to my collection as well.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. Coming into this, I'm like, man, this looks heavy. Like even the name Black Forest, I was like, I'm going to be lost in the forest and die. But no, this is honestly a really great game. I don't know if I could teach it to other people. I really enjoy playing it in this group. But kind of some of my final thoughts were in this game, just when you're playing, pick a goal and stay with that goal throughout the game. I think you can get a little bit sideswept going, oh man, what's David doing over there? He's doing all that and he's got all the farm animals. I need to get farm animals too. But just try and go along your path and do what you're going to do throughout the game and just stick with that and see how it goes. Because as everybody's kind of stated here already, I think there's many ways to win at this game and there's many different paths you can go on. And each game you play is going to have something new and exciting to unfurl here.
Yeah, that's excellent advice.
Thank you. Well, guys, it's getting a little too cold in here to make glass, and I can tell because Chris is cutting glass. So let's chill out a bit and transition into our discussion of Revive.
Revive is a 1 to 4 player deck building civilization game where you lead your tribe in exploring a thawing post-apocalyptic Earth. The game board consists of an array of location tiles emanating from the center chasm. Most start face down, representing icy terrain that is yet to be explored. All players start with an asymmetric tri-board with unlockable abilities, citizens, buildings, and special powers. Each player also has a player board with additional unlockable technologies, a small starter deck of 6 citizen cards, and an artifact card for endgame scoring. You start the game with 3 of your citizen cards face up and active. On your turn, you take up to 2 actions, repeating the same action if desired. You may choose to play a citizen card, sliding it into an available slot on your player board and receiving the indicated benefit, which might be gaining resources but could also be additional actions. During the game, you may place modules in these slots that give you additional benefits when playing certain cards. You may also choose to use your switch token, which gives you a single resource in the base game but becomes more powerful as you progress through the optional campaign. You may also choose to explore, paying resources to reach and flip over an unrevealed area tile. This gains you points but also allows you to choose a citizen card from the market to add to your active area. You can also choose to take the populate action, again paying resources to place one of your meeples on a city location. Doing so unlocks a new ability based on your individual tribe's tech tree. You may also choose to build, paying food and gears to place small or large buildings on a sand space. When doing so, you receive rewards from adjacent hexes. Several of these actions allow you to progress along 3 tracks on your player board, scoring game end points, but also unlocking machines that provide available benefits for the remainder of the game. Instead of taking actions, you may instead choose to hibernate, gaining the remaining cards from your deck, freeing up your card slots, reactivating your switch token, regaining energy for your machine, and moving up to hibernation track, which provides additional benefits. As you progress along the scoring tracks and tech trees, you will collect major artifacts. While these primarily impact game end scoring, they also initiate the end of the game when the last available artifact is taken. Players then receive points from their tribe and player boards, remaining resources, artifacts, and artifact card. The player with the most points wins the game and just chills out for a while. Revive was designed by Helga Meisner, Christian Amundsen Oatsby, Isla Svensson, and Anna Wermland, and was first published in 2022 by Aporta Games.
All right, guys, I'm excited to break this one down with you guys. So let's talk about some of the things that we really like in this game. I think kind of speaking even to the last game, I'm going to go ahead in this game too. Like my player board, I really enjoyed, even though it's a little complicated. I really felt like I was at like Mission Control Central with my own thing, and you're like flipping switches and you're moving things around and you're powering up, and it's a very intricate, takes a little bit of time, a lot of time for me to learn that board. But I think once you get the hang of it, it is such an energy like that's, oh, I'm going to do this with my card. I'm going to flip this around. I'm going to unlock this. I'm going to do that. It's really, really interesting, I think, those boards.
Yeah, you do feel like you're kind of working like an old computer or some like really ancient kind of mech, and you're like, well, if I do this, then I get these buttons that come live, and I could press this button to do this free action. So I see what you're saying there, Daniela, and it is a unique experience in that respect.
Yeah, there are, you mentioned several there are a lot of cool mechanisms here. I mean, card slots, machine, population tech tree. There's a lot to do, and I think a lot of opportunity to make really clever moves on your turn. To me, it's a great feeling to be able to combo a number of things together for an epic turn. And for me, it's like this game was made for me. It's like, okay, what are all the things that Chris would want to see in a game? Put them all together, package it up, and there it is. Now, well, I'll talk about this again later, though, because I think it can also lead to AP with all those opportunities there. But it is awesome to have all of those opportunities available and to be able to combo them.
Yeah, I agree. There's so many mechanics in this game that it's one of those challenges that you have. Is there too many mechanics? And that's the line that I need to kind of think about a little bit, because you do have 2 actions on a turn, but those actions can take you off in so many directions. And I think you really have to have a plan of what you're trying to do. We talked about that in the prior game, as Daniela said. Pick a channel and go with it and stick with it. And I think this is one where you can see lots of different shiny things going on, and it's like, oh well, I can flip that tile over, and there's a card there. Maybe I want to get that card. So it's easy for me, in particular, to get maybe a little sidetracked on what I'm trying to do to accomplish a goal. Chris, we played online. I want to talk a little bit about this. We played online, and you cheated because you had a little note on the side of you confessed.
Okay, hold on.
that you had, what was it? Get white skulls.
Get white skulls. That's what my note was. Get white skulls.
And to be fair, I mean, that's a great plan to do, to keep focused on that particular
We played
goal.
on BGA. It was an asynchronous game, and so I would take a turn, and then it might be 2 hours before I get to take my other turn. I needed to remember, hey, in this particular game, gain white skulls.
So I did want to point that out, that this is just a game where you really have to kind of stay focused on it.
Yeah.
You have so many options that you can, or at least for myself, I can get easily distracted. Squirrel. Never mind. So just keep that in mind when you're going to play this game, that there's just many options for you to do.
I almost think a playthrough with everybody that's going to play would be extremely helpful to understand every single thing you could do in the game and then replay it. Pick a path, as you're saying, Pete, and go on it. But there are a lot of things to understand. I mean, even in the deck building component of this game, David had a sweet deck game going last time, and he was using these to power up and do many different moves. And he, like, a couple times, I'm like, how did you get all those actions on one turn? You know what I mean? But you just built a really good deck, and it really worked out well for you.
Yeah, this is a combo-tastic game, I like to say. Like, there's 5 main actions you can take, but how you play those main actions and kind of where they could lead you down those paths. This game is a game that if you are looking to combo, you're going to love it. I think I'll talk about a little of the negatives, that could lead to some really long turns, which, is something that I'll talk about. But as far as like having that feeling of like, if I play A, then I could do B, C, and D all in the same turn, and then somebody else that doesn't have that combo, it could not feel as good sometimes, because I know Danielle was sitting next to me and being like, well, my turn's over in like a minute, and you were going for 5.
Yeah.
Just things keep triggering if you play this game right. And I know Pete was doing some free actions that kept triggering stuff, and he had this other system going with his computer, and I had more of a card-based system. So there are different mechanics that you can definitely combo together in this game, which makes it fun.
And much like a lot of complicated games like this, the more you play it, the more you start to see that, the more it comes naturally. Pete, you mentioned that game we were playing. Part of it might have been it was a 2-player game, and so you didn't have as much that could mess with what we were trying to do. But also, just the more we're playing, I felt like that was the first game where I was actually able to put things together. I had a plan, I was able to execute it. Things were working. I got an engine going, and I said, here's where I can get a lot of points from. I was able to execute it. And it was the first time I really felt that machine, rather than just being random things that seemed to me like, oh, every once in a while I'll think of that. I was using that machine every time to my advantage and really making it count. And I think the more I play it, the more I'll be able to do that. And again, you get that in a lot of games, but there's so many mechanisms here. To me, what that means is there's that much more that when you think, okay, now I'm there, and then you're like, oh, now I'm able to unlock this piece, and it's constantly getting better as you play it.
Yeah, and this is another game, as I stated in the last game, where don't worry about what the person to the right or the left of you is doing. I think David and I both played the A side still in the last game, and both Pete and Chris played the opposite side that had some power-ups with different players, and they had a different deck that they were working from. But I remember I was looking at Pete and I was getting pissed off. I was like, Pete is moving all of his tokens over there. I'm like, Pete is smoking like us right now. Like, there's no chance. And then whatever David did, he just freaking zoomed by and like just exploded with the points and stuff. So it was just interesting. But again, as everybody's kind of saying collectively here, just kind of focus on a couple of your missions, pick a couple combos that you want to do, and go for that.
Yeah, well, with that game, that I was actually really trying very hard to move those tokens around and go up that track. What I didn't realize is, in order to cash in on those, getting up to the top, you had to have scoring cards. I had 1.
Oh, okay.
So again, think about how you're going to score at the end game. So, when we play these games, I just like to do things and see what comes out. But that was kind of evident in that particular game, where I thought I was doing pretty good. I was moving up. I worked for David last time, but then I went to score, and I literally only had one card that scored for me, where I think, David, when you played, you had like 35 cards in your hand or something like that, and you kind of like lapped us, I think. Maybe not that bad, but anytime you're playing a game, if it's important for you to win, learn how to score the game at the end, because you got to really know what those end game bonuses are. And that's another thing that we talked about. You get dealt out a couple gold cards in the beginning, which is always a nice thing to have, because it gives you a little bit of direction on what you maybe want to go for, whether you're going for boxes or whether you're trying to put most people out there. Use that as a guide as well when you're playing the game, which I think adds to that variability and each game being a little unique.
To me, I'll talk about this a little bit because, I talk about end game a lot, and I don't, I like equal turns and I don't like uneven turns. This game is uneven turns potentially, but I like the way that it does it. And the reason why is because whoever ends the game, all the other players get to go one more time, but the player who ends it does not. And, I like games like that because it makes the person who's ending the game really think, do I really want this to be my last go because everybody else is going to get a say at the table? Or do I prolong it potentially? And sometimes you can't help it. There are certain situations in the game where you have to reset. So you're doing that, but not to put yourself in this situation. It's almost like a reversal of like racing there. It's like you want to race there, but you want to race there at the right point, so that when you hit it, it works for you and it really messes up everybody else. Or you're trying to say, I don't want to hit it because I want Pete to hit it so that I get one more turn after Pete goes. So I'm purposely doing things maybe at a slower pace if I see the end game coming, so that I'll get an extra turn after somebody else has completed their turn. So I like the way this end game kind of incorporates a little bit better, even though it's not equal turns, which I love in games, but this game does it in a way where I feel like it's okay the way it does it, and I do enjoy the way this one ends. But I still think it ends really suddenly.
Yeah, the last thing I'll mention is you kind of touched on it when you started, Danielle, and I'll finish this here too. I think the production on this game is excellent. There's a lot of great components, and what I really like about it is it's wood, it's paper, it's cardboard. This is not the super blinged out $200 version, but it feels like a really blinged out game that, oh my gosh, look at this double layer multifunctional machine player board, you're slotting things in, etc. But it's still just paper, cardboard, and wood. And it's proof to me that okay, you don't have to spend massive amount of money to have a really nice, cool, neat production.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that works really well for us. Stuff as you were just talking about too, the slotting of things, even the little tokens that you can get fit right in the top of your board. You're not hitting your board and things are moving off. Even the round circles that fit in your board when you're moving those around, those all have its place. So it's a huge setup. It's extensive. You need a big table to play this game, but yeah, everything fits. I like that too, Chris, when you're not hitting the table and all your pieces are going flying around. So, well, let's talk about some of the thorns that we have then in this game. Chris, to your point about the production being really good, I want to say in the same kind of breath, I think the game looks muddy though. And I think it's very brown and it's very just kind of, I don't know, like only the dragon's heads have color to them really. And I'm not sure for me, the theme really comes across. But that's just me. I really don't even know what I'm doing in Revive. I know I'm doing an engine and I know I'm building something and I know, but I don't know, like, what am I reviving?
You're rediscovering and reviving civilization. But the world's been dead for 5,000 years. You're coming. That being said, I agree. It is the colors kind of blend together. And actually, there's a lot of comments out there that say, hey, why did you do yellow and green? It's such a light green to where there's certain color blindness. You can't see it.
Oh, okay.
And one of the designers even chimed in on BGG and said, yeah, when we designed it, it was a darker green. And then the production came back and it was too close. And even the designer's like, yeah, I'm a little bit colorblind and I can't even see it. So
Okay.
there are other things just not looking drab. It's, hey, you may not actually be able to play this game.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the player turns, and I think they can feel long, especially when somebody else ticks their engine off and they're doing things. Now, again, when Chris and I played asymmetrically or on BGA, it was nice because then I could take my time and I can think about it. The turn. I didn't feel as rushed. I still didn't do as well as I wanted to. But I think when you're actually playing, in real life and you're playing the boards, there is some downtime, and because like you said, David could be doing 5 different things, and then I slot one card and I get one crystal, and then all right, well, what's my next turn? I'm trying to I'll move my slide up and I'll take 2 books from Chris's thing and I'm done. Where you have to have those turns to set up the good long turns for yourself. But I think that's the only thing. And you get a couple of those in a row, especially if you're playing multiple players, the full 4 player count, that it can feel a little bit long. And we talked about it going
I don't think it is long in between turns. Even if you're having a good turn of your own, there's 3 long turns in a 4-player game. And that's another thing I liked about the 2-player game, that there wasn't that much downtime. Even if you're taking an epic turn, it's only 1 epic turn you got to sit through and not 3. And I mentioned earlier that, hey, this Revive game, it seems like it was made for me. But every time we play it at 4, it just frustrates the heck out of me, because it's just, hey, it's such a fun game and I don't get to experience it very much because I'm sitting here being just fuming that I'm just sitting here doing absolutely nothing. And I mentioned I can be AP. Some of us at the table can be AP, and this game itself contributes to AP, and it's just so much downtime. I don't know if I'd want to play this at 4 as much as I'm so glad we played the 2-player game.
I am too.
Because I have a totally different view on this game. When I'm playing a 4-player game, it's just frustrating and not fun for me. That 2-player game was a blast.
It was, and I wanted to call that out too. I know we chatted a
you
little
were
bit
playing
earlier.
with me too. That's always fun.
Yeah, it's a great time to get beat up real bad. But no, I agree with you. I think the 2 and I would like to try maybe a 3-player game. It might not be as bad because then you can focus on your turn. But that's my point.
I mean, to me, it's like when you're getting the fidgets essentially, because you're like, I need to go, I need to do my next thing before I forget. And all of us, I think, were stressing at one point, like I know I wanted to do this, but now I don't remember because it's been so long between the time you ended that turn and go, okay, I need to do that my next turn, to the time you got to actually do that. And frustrating. Yeah,
there's a lot to hold in your headspace between turns, and then it's frustrating because you can't remember what you thought you were going to do. And so, yes, I do agree. There, at 4 players, yes, there's a lot to definitely hold in that headspace between turns.
Squirrel.
Yeah.
Oh.
But then, even though the game does seem long to me, and again, it's part of us because it's the same amount of time as Black Forest that we just talked about, but it seemed longer.
Yeah.
But then somehow the game end just sneaks up on you. It's like, wait, what do you mean it's over? I just got to the point where I can start to do some stuff, and the game's over.
Yeah.
And we did play the extended version where you can say, hey, put a couple other artifacts out there. That was better for me. It was a little longer with the downtime, but at least it felt like I had a little more time to do what I was trying to do and actually reap a little bit of benefit.
I feel though I only got like 1 more turn, because I remember I was like, is this our last turn? You're like, no, you get 1 more. And I was like, oh, that, like, a lot of good that'll do, like 2 extra turns. So no, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, last thing I'll say about this that's kind of a negative is I think which is not always a negative for a lot of people, but the player powers that are on here are sometimes a little confusing, and I'm not sure that the rule book does a good job explaining exactly how some of the harder player powers actually work. I mean, there's a lot of ambiguous terms sometimes when you're reading it, and I feel like looking at it, I'm like, you read this, Chris, or you read this, Pete. What do you think this actually means? And I know we had a conference sometimes and say, okay, we think this is what it means. We're going to play it that way. Absolutely. Because the wording is just sometimes ambiguous, and it frustrates me because I think the asymmetric player powers are cool, but when they're done and they're written in such a language that it's more complicated, it just kind of muddies that experience of like, is that actually how it was supposed to be played, or did we just play that wrong?
I actually had a comment on that too, because that was one of the thorns that I wrote about and I was going to ask Pete, because watching him do everything he was supposed to do, granted, now it could be that you had all those chips moved over and you just couldn't score for it because of your cards, but I felt like you were doing so much every turn, and for what? Like, you beat me by 1 point. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I felt like you were just doing so much, and then I was wondering, this game is really good at basing the base powers and stuff like that, and I get it. People want to have a little bit more action. They want different players and characters to kind of look at that, but I was thinking the same thing, David. Like, are those player powers like really understandable? Like, was it worth it to
I think
get that
it's
crazy?
situational. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the game that you talked about where you guys played the A side and Chris and I played the B side, I didn't even bother with those people because I was so confused on it. I just kind of, quite honestly, I just ignored that. Yeah. And that's why I said, well, I'm just going to go after tracks, because the player power, I I didn't know how to leverage. And maybe over time, or if you play this game a lot, you want to explore more, or you go through the campaign that they have, that it might be more worth it, as far as the exploration part of it. So,
and I was going to go someplace similar there, Pete, where the last game we played, again, that 2-player game on BGA, I didn't use my player power at all. Not because I didn't understand it in that case, just because I didn't see it benefiting me. And I was just going, hey, I don't have to do everything. I need to do the right things for the situation I'm in and the way I've set up. And I had an end game that was really good to populate. I had a power to populate. I could see where those powers would go. I said, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I don't need to do that player power. And so I didn't. And in other games, you want to clear that whole thing off and get the points for it. So I think it's situational. I think there's a lot of games where it's not about doing things. It's about doing the right things. We talked about Agricola several weeks ago where, hey, you can get all the grain you want. It's not going to do you any good beyond a certain point, right? So you can be doing a lot of stuff in a lot of games. It's about doing the right things at the right time, I think.
Yeah. All right, David, why don't you take us over to the Collector's Corner on this one?
Okay, so for this game on Amazon, just because we're battling these out, it's $68.98. I always love those weird pricing. So it's right in that corner where Black Forest is. Used, it's going for $40 to $55 right now. I see it vary between those price points. And then at our local board game store, just up, a couple up the street from us, it's going for $63.99 there. About an $8 difference from where Black Forest is. Again, I think, the components are really good on this. You got your dual layer player boards. You got a lot of stuff in this. That's kind of where the price point came out at. I think when it first came out, it was like around $49.99, and over time it's gone up.
All right. Final thoughts then, David. We'll start with you.
It's kind of both of these games, but I'll talk about Revive first. I think both of these games are really good, and we'll kind of talk about it as we get into the battle. I just think that they've been passed over a little bit from other games, just maybe because they were a little bit hard to get into, and there was a lot of good games that came out. But I would say if you're looking for some good games to play, these two are really good. So I like Revive. I enjoy the combo-tastic things. I just want to say if you're playing at 4, just maybe know it could be a little bit long, and there's going to be a lot of headspace. You might want a pad of paper, to write down your moves.
You might want a book.
Before your turn. But other than that, I really enjoy this game and what it does. I like how the map gets revealed during the game process, and I do like that exploration aspect of it. But there's just a lot of working systems in this game, so just know that going in. Going over to Pete.
Yeah, I think what you just tagged on there, I think the thing that really draws me to this game is that exploration where you're coming out of the middle of the game board and you go off into different directions. And you can go any way that you want. But to me, the exploration, flipping over the tiles, not knowing what's going to be there, having the ability to kind of maybe move it around and kind of build that board out as you go. That's the one thing I do like about the game. Chris?
Yeah, I've been a roller coaster when I first saw this game, and maybe the first time I played it, I was like, okay, this is, again, the game for me. It's like it was made for me. And then several plays we had, it was just the downtime was just wearing on me. I was like, man, I really want to love this game. And I was fully prepared to come into this podcast and just say, yeah, this should be a winner for me, and I can't stand it. And then we played that 2-player game, and now I'm in love with it again. And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe this is a great game for me, but it's got to be at the right player count. So, it's one of those games where I say, I'll play it, and I'm going to enjoy the heck out of it, but I'm only going to play it at this player count.
Right.
Yeah, and it is on BGA, just for people to know this.
Yeah.
Black Forest is not, but this is on Board Game Arena.
That's a good note, yeah. I think overall, we've all been saying the same thing again on this one is pick a couple goals and go for that. I know Pete just reminded me, he's like, part of the things that he liked was flipping over some of the spaces on the board to see what it is. I think I flipped one last game. And again, our points were very similar. So it's very interesting to see how the points shake out in this one. So it's super interesting to play and get into, and there's a lot to do. And I think each and every game is going to be a new one for you. So enjoy. Well, guys, I think it's time to put this discussion on ice and head over to today's Battle of the Funnest.
All right, everyone, the moment of truth has arrived. It's time to separate the men from the boys and the games from the toys. We're pitting these games head-to-head against each other in the ultimate face-off. In one corner, weighing in at 3.23 out of 5, with an overall BGG rating of 7.6. Born in the mountains of southwest Germany, making the cut while shut in the gut of a beech nut hut, hitting players broadside and leaving them wide-eyed throughout the Schwarzwald, the Bavarian behemoth, the brute with a blowpipe, wham, bam, thank you, ham, Black Forest. In the other corner, weighing in at 3.44 out of 5, with an overall BGG rating of 8.1, breaking free from an icy station after a 5,000-year hibernation, spewing sarcasm from the chasm that would make a phantasm spasm, the head honcho in a fur-lined poncho, the Ice Queen, the Sovereign of the Snow, the intact contact of hijacked artifacts, Revive! And now let's find out which game is above the board, across the board, in our Battle of the Funnest Showdown. All right, everyone, we're going to evaluate these games head-to-head, 5 different categories: theme and production, mechanisms, value for your time, replayability, and the fun factor. The game that gets the most votes wins each category, and the game that wins the most categories takes the prize in our Battle of the Funnest. So let's fire it up with theme and production. David.
Yeah, for theme and production, on this one, I'm going to go with Revive. I just feel that overall, I'm not quite sure. I know the Black Forest are creating glass or something like that, but Revive, I do feel like I'm exploring that world. I do think that the art, I'm kind of more drawn to the Black Forest art, but the Revive, just the whole world, and I feel like what I'm doing, when I'm actually immersed in it, I feel more immersed into the theme on that. So I'm going to go with Revive on this one, and I'm going to kick it off to Pete.
Yeah, again, we are on different sides of this. I actually like, as far as the theme and production goes, production-wise, I think they are both well-quality games. Either one of these I would be happy to have in my collection. The theme for me, though, I enjoy the theme better with Black Forest. We didn't talk about it too much, but you also have your little tableau where you're building out, and it is so thematic for me. You have your forest, and you got to chop that forest down to clear it out, to actually get wood, and all the things that happen with that. In addition, Daniela also mentioned that with Revive, the board seemed white and gray, and I get that's part of the theme. I just like the vibrant colors in Black Forest a little bit better. I'm going to go to Daniela this time.
Yeah, I'm actually with you on that. I believe Black Forest, for me personally, the theme outdoes wins this category, unfortunately, because I know we're talking about both things, but production again is wonderful on both of these games. I love that wheel component on Black Forest, and really in Revive, all the slotting and the cardboard on that is really well done too. But just the theme on this one's going to have to go to Black Forest on this. Chris.
I agree the theme does come through on Black Forest. I think it's incorporated really well. I really like what you were saying, Pete, about chopping the wood and doing all that. It's really incorporated well. The production, I think, is kind of on par for both, but Revive takes it to the next level. I mentioned earlier, I feel like Revive is a deluxe version just with standard components. That's enough for me. It was just an absolutely excellent production. I'm going to go with Revive for that reason, which means we've got a 2-2 tie right off the bat on 2 very close games. We break our ties with our fifth meeple, Dave. He doesn't join us in the studio, but he sends his tiebreakers to Pete in case we need him. Pete, what did Dave have to say on theme and production?
So Dave said, while Revive has the dual layer boards, I choose Black Forest since it helps you feel and experience the making of glass and everything involved in the process.
All right, so Black Forest wins theme and production. Of course, we don't really know if Dave actually said that or if Pete just wants Black Forest to win, but we're going to have to trust him. Black Forest wins theme and production. We'll go to mechanisms. I'll kick it right back to Pete.
Mechanisms. This one was a little bit closer for me. Both of these have some really awesome mechanisms. Now, the challenge for me is there are so many mechanisms in Revive that I think there might just be one too many in there, where I think with Black Forest, that time and those wheels are really what does it. So I'm going to go with Black Forest just because it seems a little bit more focused and you can kind of work that time wheel better. And like I said, I get distracted too much when I have too many options. I'm going to swing to my left to David.
Yeah, so I think we're on opposite sides of the aisle again, Pete. For this one, I'm going to have to go with Revive. It was really close. I do like what Black Forest has to do and the mechanism with the wheel, and it's just kind of those automatic resources that kind of fill in. I do also like the Traveling Merchant, always switching up that game board state. But with Revive, I think if you take a more macro approach, I know there's a lot of mechanisms, but I think you have to think of this game on a more macro level that, when I'm playing it, a lot of times I'm having to see how the systems actually work, not just the individual mechanisms. And so when I think about the process, I'm really thinking, how does the systems work with each other so that I can combo it better than just the individual mechs? And so I'm thinking more of a kind of zoom out view when I play that game than when I'm playing another game where it's more tactical, like I feel like Black Forest is. And so for that reason, I don't see a lot of games that do that on that level. And so I'm going to go with Revive on the mechanisms, but it's still close because I do really like the puzzle on Black Forest. I'm going to kick it over to Daniela.
I think I'm siding with Pete again. I agree, Pete, with the same principle that there's a little bit too much in Revive to do. Even though they're both, I think, clean and they do them both well, I feel like the mechanisms, because even in Revive, again, we're looking at the book, we're trying to understand how different player cards work. We did that like a hair to understand some of the buildings, but we generally understood that. I feel like Black Forest can be out on the table and you generally understand how it works, like with everybody looking at it in a playthrough. We didn't have to go back to the book to try and understand different things. So to me, it's a little bit cleaner. Speaking as a newbie on this podcast, I'm going to have to go with Black Forest just for the clean mechanisms on that one. Chris.
Yeah, Revive has a lot of mechanisms that really work well together. I agree, David, finding that way to put them all together. I love every single one of those mechanisms. I'm not sure any one of those mechanisms is necessarily unique. It is all well done, and they're well incorporated together. Black Forest has a lot of mechanisms I also like. Again, maybe most of them not unique, but that resource wheel is 100% unique. Coupled with that fun mechanism of that traveling merchant, that was enough for me to where, hey, this is actually new mechanisms to me, maybe groundbreaking and something that makes the game fun and adds a little challenge in there. I'm going to go with Black Forest on mechanisms, which means Black Forest wins again, taking mechanisms 3-1. We will go to value for your time. I'll go to Daniela.
All right, value for your time. Very interesting that these games both came out at around the same play time, because it feels that push. Revive feels long when you're playing it, and then again at the end it's just that boom bam, you're done and you're just like, oh no, what just happened to the game? Black Forest has a little bit of, okay, we're getting ready, and you can kind of see it, you're building up to the end of it. But to David's like demise, we have that unequal turns, which is just annoying as crap. So value for your time, gosh, these are both really close for me again, though, as again I'm speaking as the newbie here. I feel like Black Forest is one of those games I'm having more interaction. It's a little bit cleaner than that, and the value for my time playing Revive is just a little bit too long during those player takes and turns, I should say. And I think to speak to Chris and Pete, I would like to try it maybe at a lower player count and see how that shakes out, and maybe my vote would change, but for now it's Black Forest. Chris.
Yeah, I've talked before about the downtime in Revive. You mentioned both of these take the same amount of time for 4-player games. Too much downtime at the higher player counts for Revive. So to me, this is very player count dependent. I know I have to choose something. For Revive, if I'm playing 2 players, it's Revive. But if I just have to say across all player counts, it's Black Forest for me. Value for your time is how much of my time am I actually engaged in doing something and feeling like I'm playing a game. It's Black Forest for me because I'm staring at the board waiting too much in Revive at the higher player counts. I'll go to David.
Yeah, for me on this one, I just think it comes down to, I think player count is a big deal on this one, but I'm going to have to go with Black Forest on this one as well. I just think that the quick snappy turns just kind of make it a little bit faster, and it feels more evenly paced. Even though there's the same amount of time, sometimes it's the pacing that counts in a game. And for Black Forest, I feel like the pacing throughout the game, the tempo, and I feel like with Revive, it just kind of slams the brakes on at the end, kind of like a car wreck. You just don't see it coming, and then you do, and then it's over. So for that reason, I'm going with Black Forest because I think it's a better tempo and I do enjoy it. So I'm going over to Pete.
Yeah, we're going to sweep this one. For all the things that you guys said, the only thing that I would add to it is I really like the interaction with the other people around the table that I don't feel that I get when I'm playing Revive. So I'm going to go with that.
All right, so Black Forest, a 4-0 sweep in value for your time, takes a commanding lead. We'll go to replayability. I'll start this one. Black Forest is fun. It seems like a lot of the same for me, but at the same time, it's fun, and I do want to play it again. Certainly the buildings I get, they're going to be different from game to game, not as far as what's available, but what you take, that's going to drive my path, but it's still going to feel kind of similar. Revive has the different factions, double-sided factions, different ways you can unlock the abilities through either population or your machine can be different each time. And then you have the campaign on top of all that. To me, replayability is Revive by far. So I'm going to go with Revive. I will kick it over to Pete.
100% agree with you there. Not much more to say, what you already did. Just, the randomness of the tiles that get set up. You never know what you're going to flip over. The cards that come out, they're going to be different. So Revive, this one, it was an easy one for me. I'm going to go over to Daniela.
Yeah, for all the reasons that we're talking about right now, as well as the mechanics, which I liked less of in Black Forest, and how there are so many in Revive. I think that allows Revive to have more options and more replayability at the end of the day. There's, again, I was just saying earlier, I flipped over one of the discovery tiles while we were playing and still kind of somehow made it out like in the same points range. So there is a lot you can do in this. It's just kind of how things are being dealt and how you're going down your track and your path when you're playing, how your board's kind of shaking out as you're playing. So I agree. Revive right now got a lot more replayability in it. David.
Yeah, I'm just going to make it a clean sweep on this one and go with Revive. The only thing I would add is that I do like Revive in the fact that a lot of the multipliers and the end game goals, even though there's public ones that are out there, there are hidden agendas that people have in this game. And I do like hidden agendas. I feel like you can do things to have points showing on the board, but you could also be playing a game where you can come back from behind when the game ends because all the multipliers and what the agendas were that you then reveal to everybody at the end of the table. So I do like that surprise element at the end of the game. I do think it always makes for it to be fun, especially as you play this game a lot. You might be trying to guess what other people might have based off how they are playing the game at the table as well. So Revive for me.
All right, so a sweep for Revive and replayability, 4-0. Trying to fight back. We'll go to Fun Factor. Daniela, I know you like fun. Which one takes the Fun Factor here?
Yeah, fun factor, I feel the camaraderie around the table. We were having, I think, a really good time. We were all kind of looking at each other's boards or kind of looking around a little bit more. Goes to Black Forest. I do think if you're a serious person, Revive is going to be a great game for you, though, and you may introverts unite, Chris. I think introverts will love Revive. I like it as well. I'm a little bit more extrovert, but it's a really good thinky game if you want to get into it and you just want to have an evening where you're like, all right, let's go and still use some brain power and have fun. So I want to put that caveat in there because those types of people would like that game probably a lot more. David.
Yeah, for fun factor, I'm going to go with Black Forest as well. I just think there's more moments in this game where you kind of are mad at other people. Like, there's a lot more player interaction than as at first perceived in this game. And that's what always makes the game a little bit more fun for me is just having the ability to basically interact with other people and kind of either slightly mess up their game plans or indirectly, because there's no direct conflict in this game. But there's a lot of things you could do that really kind of can get under people's skin in this game. And I do like that. So for that reason, if you don't like that, this might not be fun for you. But if it sounds like fun, you like it into little mini conflicts like that, Black Forest might be your jam like it is mine. I'm going to pass this over to Pete.
Yeah, this one was pretty hard for me. Originally, I was thinking that I liked Black Forest better. And then Chris and I played on BGA at 2 players, and I think it was a much better game at 2 players. But I got to go back to my heart, and the game that I want to go out and buy right now is Black Forest, just because I enjoy that game. To me, it's a little bit more fun. It's very thematic. And David, is just as you said, the interaction with other players at the board really, really mattered to me. Chris?
Yeah, for me, I don't think it's going to be a surprise. I want to go with Black Forest here, but I also think if we did this recording again 4 to 6 months from now and we've played some more Revive, I might change my mind because, and especially if this was the second meeple and not the fifth meeple, and we're like, hey, this is all about how you playing games with 2-player games, then it would be Revive easily for me. I know that now, having played that. So I struggled a little bit with this one and said, damn, that game was fun yesterday.
Yeah, it was.
Right. and it's now calling me. And again, I'm thinking, well, maybe I will buy it and just for the 2-player experience. But from what my experience has been so far, it's Black Forest. It's going to sweep Fun Factor, and that'll do it with a score of 4-1. Black Forest kicks some glass and wins wins today's Battle of the Funnest.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of yet another episode of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our discussion, and if you'd like to get in touch, just email us at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com or reach out to us on social media. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, if someone offers you a room and board, make sure the board is for a game. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Adios, amigos.
I nailed him.
Yeah, you did.
All right. Well, I didn't nail him.
Das ist good.
I'm going to start all over again.
That was not on the paper.
I know, I added it. You're always trying to trip me up with crazy things to say.
I don't even know what that means. And I don't think I should look it up.
It just means your are cold.
Okay, that's what
That's going.
Oh, man.